Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we've just reviewed this monstrosity, which now goes to Barkey for signature. And again, the tax part is regressive and odious. The loosening of the estate tax is another way to let the ill-gotten theft of the Reagan bubbles and the bubbles of the 1990s be forever incorporated into private hoards for the benefit of oligarchs. Think of the Koch brothers as the archetypical kinds of figures. The stuff for the unemployed is wretched, meager, inadequate, deceptive, not a word about the 99ers. And the worst thing of all is the attack on Social Security, which has now begun. We've set up a situation where the financial insolvency of Social Security is brought closer. It was 2037, meaning practically off the screen, but now it's a number of years closer. And if that 2% cut in the payroll tax, FICA, is allowed to stand, it will continue to come closer. The answer just on that, in a very narrow sense, would have been remove the cap. In other words, don't just have the payroll tax collected on the first $106,000 of earnings, but on all earnings. All wage earnings pay the Social Security payroll tax, and there you have it. At that point, the Social Security becomes completely viable as far as the eye can see. In other words, as far as it is given to humanity to look into the future. And of course, we know the business community wants certainty. Well, certainty is not what you have in this world. As Benjamin Franklin said, you want certainty? I give you two: death and taxes. Those are the two things you can be absolutely sure of. So that's for the capital strike people. The plutocrats have been engaged in a capital strike, a refusal to invest, partly motivated by politics, partly, of course, because there's a world economic depression, which none of this does anything to touch. We're told that the plutocrats are sitting on $2 trillion of cash. Now, sitting on it means, of course, using it for speculation and for other things. This is cash assets on the balance sheets of companies that are presumably not just financial companies. None of this will change. And I guess that's the idea. We're hearing people say, well, this will have a stimulating effect. There's a stimulus built in here. There are several percentage points more in gross domestic product and so forth. No. Remember, to get out of a depression, you have got to increase the production and sales of capital goods. First of all, you've got to have a capital goods producing sector. We have NPR discussions this morning. A woman calls in and says, we know that small business is the heart of our economy. Small business is how jobs are produced. Small business is what we're relying on for recovery. You're in trouble. That's a very sick economy. Whatever happened to big business, large modern industries, high technology, high capital intensive industries? You're going to have your recovery based on pizza parlors, Starbucks, falafel stands. What are you going to have? This is ridiculous. This is pathetic, and it shows the absolute atrophy of economic thinking, that consumer goods, the sales at the mall, and small business hiring is supposed to be the key to a recovery. It can't be. Therefore, the depression gets worse. And, of course, from the point of view of the hedge fund hyenas and the various wolf packs out there cruising in the financial markets, you can now say that the U.S. Bond situation, the U.S. deficit situation gets worse because, of course, all of these tax cuts for the super rich and the relief on the estate tax for especially endowed parasites, right? Think of Paris Hilton as somebody who will benefit from this at various times, and similar people. And you can imagine what kind of productive investment Paris Hilton will carry out. So all of this is paid for with borrowed money, all paid for with borrowed money. So whatever that demagogy was from the Tea Party about deficits and debt, they just had a hiatus, right? They just passed through a lacuna where none of that applied. And, of course, they'll be back, right? The reactionaries will be beating down the doors in early January, demanding immediate cuts. And that, I guess, is the most sinister. The Harry Reid leadership has capitulated to the reactionary Republicans on the $1.1 trillion omnibus bill that was supposed to fund the U.S. government until the end of September, when the fiscal year comes to a close. And that has now been blocked by reactionary Republicans. There were more than enough reactionary Republicans saying, we want not to live under that budget. We want to have a chance to attack that. And what they'll attack, of course, is what they call non-defense discretionary spending, which means whatever's left of social programs, whatever's left of the social safety net. Concerning earmarks, this is, of course, absurd, because it's a $1.1 trillion bill. The earmarks $8 billion. Most of these earmarks are items of some merit, and the embarrassment of these reactionaries show that they've lost any connection to a local economy. Think of Ron Paul. When the time came to rebuild parts of the port of Galveston, he needed $100 million to do that. So Ron Paul inserted an earmark to that effect in the supplemental bill that went through in the early part of 2009. This is not the stimulus, but the supplemental, about $400 billion that came later, and then voted against the bill because the bill passed with Democratic votes. And I would simply say, why not come out and say that the port of Galveston is an item of national interest? We need it. The Houston-Galveston port complex is the main terminal that we have to the west of New Orleans, and therefore it's a national interest. It's perfectly legitimate, and this is exactly what a legislative branch person should do. Because if you don't have an earmark, you're essentially leaving it up to the bureaucrats, right? The pointy-headed bureaucrats in the executive departments get to make these decisions. What's wrong with the Congress having input in directing this towards something? Now, of course, there's an edifice of corruption around this, but that's nothing new. The main question with government is, are you delivering some economic progress or are you not? And the answer seems to be no. This money has to go for the bondholders in Wall Street. That's the outcome. So we'd like to know where Senator DeMint gets all of his influence. Why is he all of a sudden such an important guy? Who appointed him king or alternative majority leader, right? DeMint, of course, the arch-reactionary who seems to be able to crack the whip on McConnell and Reid and everybody else. And remember, there was this interesting awards ceremony where DeMint was given an award personally by David Koch, David Koch, as he's also known in New York society circles. But David Koch of the Koch brothers gave DeMint an award and made a wonderful speech telling what a great guy he was. I'm really wondering whether it's not the money from David Koch that flows into the various PACs and other vehicles that DeMint uses to build up this influence and to promote these arch-reactionaries, people who are really beyond the pale of even what large parts of the Republican Party could put up with. So they're now moving, of course, the reactionaries of this ilk, right, the Koch inspired coke fiends, cokeheads. They will attempt now to block the raising of the debt ceiling. And if they want to do this, this is the one way that could provoke the worldwide financial panic, which is always latent these days, which was not present in this form in 1995 when they tried this for the first time. Remember, the Constitution says Congress shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. These reactionaries, at war with the Constitution as usual, say, no, we don't like that, and if we can't change it, we're going to change it through extra-constitutional action, through a coup. And that gets you into the area of treason. Back in a minute.